Okay, one of the stories that I've been waiting to ask you about is how the sea lion came about, because I know that you had a major part of that, the building of it and all the story that went with it.
Well,
I'm sure that Betty Lou.
I don't know as I want to tell it all. But what it all started about, you might say, is just like Martin Luther King. It was a dream, and it was Ernie Collins and Ed Collins' dream. That's Ernie's father, and he wanted to build a ship, and he'd done that. And the way we got involved in it was through the timber in the woods. We had the oak that they wanted to build a ship out of. How Ernie got a hold of that was he talked to boat builders in Buffalo, and we had furnished and had for years would buy cut oak on demand, what they wanted for keels and that sort of stuff for the ships they made, the boats they made, and a lot of them went into Chris Craft Corporation, which was in Lakewood and around here. But that's how the Cheneys got involved in the shipbuilding business. Yeah, but it was through Ernie Cowan, and then you got to sort this out because it's the sea lion. What is it? It's the sea, Cowan, Cheney, lion. Lion is the Lyons brother, Lyons family. Three brothers at the Lyons Lumber Company up there. Had run this Lyons sawmill.
Yeah, see, I never knew that.
And that's the foundation of the sea lion. Then we come through, and you might say we had an agreement amongst Ed Cowan and my dad and Bertrand Lyons, and okay, we'll furnish the trees. You saw them. Ernie and Ed will build. Ed was Ernie's dad. They'll build them. Ernie built them, and that's where the sea lion come from.
How'd they decide to build it up in DeWittville?
Well, they didn't. They built it, might say a garage and things in Mayville or out of Mayville and over to Westfield and over what are they, there's a name to that place where Lyons Brothers is way up on the hill between Mayville and Westfield. It's Lyons Sawmill. That's listed. Well, it isn't anymore because it's deceased. They sold out. But that's the sea lion there. And
why did Ernie want to do that?
One of the primary purposes that Ernie wanted for the sea lion was education.
All
to teach kids about how things were made and how things were done a long time ago.
And you took the lumber and you went up
and had it sawed in the dimensions that we wanted. In Bertrand Lyons done that, and we air dried it, the sea lion, and I mean this was built like they built them back in them days. All the square nails and all of that, and I've got all kinds of relics of that if you want to show them.
The tools were tools that would have been used.
Yep, straight edge and compasses, and of course Ernie had all this on paper and in his head. And how Betty got involved in it was right after we got married. You can tell them your story there, how you met Ernie Cowan.
It was shortly after we were married, yes. And Ernie was a deputy. And one day there was a knock at the back door, and I went to the back door, and there stood Ernie in all his regalia, uniform, and my first thought was, oh no, what's John done now? But then he wanted to talk to him.
Faith in the mother.
He wanted to talk to him about building the sea lion. I think he hadn't even cut trees yet.
No, we hadn't, because we went to the woods after that. And we got we marked the trees we wanted.
Did Mr. Cowan have a design? Did he create the design, or did he get it from some?
Well, it was all in, I would say it was all in his head to start with.
Really?
And he drawed that up and done it with all of the tools. We made 90% of the tools, like the edges, and I got that stuff if you want to take pictures of them out there, some of the bits and chisels and hammers and
It was patterned after a 16th century merchant ship. And he did the plans, but that's what it was patterned after. And it's about the size of
the Pinta.
the Pinta.
Oh.
And if
Okay.
you can imagine crossing the lake, that's the lake, the ocean,
Yeah.
in a ship that size, oh my goodness, I
Well,
can't imagine.
The tonnage on it is what a boxcar, a railroad car, 48 ton is what the capacity is of the sea line. It was an intercoastal trading ship. And we had 11 cannons on it.
Uh-huh.
And we had a lot of fun building it.
11 cannons.
And I know
Used to have.
one of
Where did
the
the cannons come from?
made them.
You made the cannons?
Ellis and Bronze made them.
Oh, what's his name? Nobby.
I don't know what
Don't
his
ask
real
what
name
his
is.
real name is, and I could if I looked it up. But Nobby, he was Ellison Bronze, and they made made the molds. He did, and I mean this was made from scratch. You know, every one of them was interesting. You had, you thought it out, you worked it out, argued it out, almost come to blows at times about who's gonna do what. But we stuck together and
Well,
made
how
it.
about the sail? Where'd that come from?
Well, that was one of the big expenses on it, and that come from England. Flax. The sails were made of flax. That's what they was back in them days. It cost us quite a lot of money, but the Sea Lion, once we got it and formed the Sea Lion Corporation, we went
Ernie insisted that everything be as authentic as possible.
in all of the ropes. It was the old type of ropes, hemp, and not the sisal, which is today's rope. All treated with oil and made as close to what it is. And that picture up there is under full sail. They started hiring people to do things, and everybody up until this point had donated everything. And when they started hiring it, they lost the brains. Ernie quit, we quit, Dad quit.
Oh.
We had the Sea Scouts from Cleveland. We had money coming out of Cleveland Sea Scouts because they training on the ship in New York State, come up here, the inspector, and this is how petty it got. Probably had about 12 or 14 Sea Scouts up in the rigging of the ship. And no more than natural, the guy comes and says, McDonald's, with a lot of his voice, and those kids went off of that ship into the water, just jumped, dove in, and come, because McDonald's is time to eat.
Oh.
They shut us down. We couldn't do it anymore. We didn't have safety nets, we didn't have this, we didn't have that.
No.
So the Sea Scouts, we couldn't have safety because of the age. And they was our sailors.
Yes.
And of course we recruited locals, and so we
Well,
got,
you did take it out on the lake.
we
I have a
sure.
picture of it.
Oh
on
yeah,
the
we
lake.
sailed it. Yeah.
At one point, the county had taken over the ferry.
The county took and was running the ferry for
Right.
years through the war in that. And
Okay.
they took it over from Elton Ball when he ceased to run it in about 1945. I'd have to look these numbers up. If you want me, I will. But he got rid of it because of that. And then the county took it over as a highway system because it was in it. And it was maintained
Right.
by the county,
Okay.
Then the bridge was coming in back in what they was talking that in the late 40s and 50s. And then they started it and they stopped it. Well,
Right.
in the meantime, Niagara Mohawk built and stole. Then,
Mhm.
so that was the ferry. And
Okay.
now the public was using the ferry in that. And okay, right after the county took it over during the war years on the ferry, and I think this is a very interesting thing, we salted the channel to keep it open so we could run it winters.
Tried to.
Tried to keep
I've
the
never
ice
heard
out.
that before.
Well, it's
Wow.
in the book,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't work because the splash of the paddle wheels build up ice on the ferry, and you get enough ice on it, it'll sink. The
Yes.
weight of the ice.
Yes.
And they called me here last month, said the ferry was sinking. Of course, I runs up, and it had, because we had that strong wind, and there was over 2 foot of ice on the halfway across the ferry, because the wind was down the lake and the ice had built and splashed, and this area was
Right.
going down. So you
Yeah.
got to compensate for it. But it's all off and floating good again. I've rescued it 3 times. When it couldn't run anymore, I went up and just done it voluntary. And the first blows I had with it, I didn't have a license. Well, I got a license. Then the next year they wanted another $10 for a license. Now, damn, and I don't have a license today, and I never will have one again. Because if an idiot can run it like me, anybody can run it. And they come down and says, well, you can't. I says, I'm running it under maintenance. Take it, like it, or lump it.
Yeah.
Well, no, you've got to. I will not. So I took the test, and I read it and filled it out. And the question on the test, what do you do in case of fire? I said, jump overboard. What do you do in case you have an emergency? I said, abandon ship. And I filled it out, and he says, you're being smart. I says, no. I says, if you're this stupid to think I'm smart, I don't want to do business with you. That's when it blew up the first time.
Yeah.
And they run it. Our Thomas took it over, started paying it. They went bankrupt. And they didn't run it there for the middle of one summer until that winter. And then we took it over again, our Sea Lion group, which I was, and Ernie was members of. And we done it on a volunteer basis again. And we did it volunteer. And we haven't paid wages since. Before I operate next year, I will have to put in the letter state I have to put GPS and radar on the ferry. I've told you this story. And in all the years I've run it, I haven't got lost yet coming across there. We're anchored with 1.25-inch cables, 2 of them anchored on both sides of the lake.
Four corners.
So I called Bill Parment, and he says, John, let me take it.
The state just has no sense of logic
In no
whatsoever.
logic. In 27, we worked 240 hours, 16 weeks, 2 holidays. Then the pedestrians was 1,800, 1,630 cars, 100 and some bikes, 180 motorcycles, and 42 animals. Horses, dogs, cats,
And
mostly
that's with the
horses,
bridge
ponies.
going back and forth.
Yeah. Now motorcycles, since we've started, the clubs
Yes.
out of Canada
Yeah.
and bicycle clubs from different around. This is a highlight, like the bicycles out of Pittsburgh. Come up, ride to Pegan Peak, come to the ferry on a given day. We accommodate them. They give us a hefty donation, really more than they need to. And there'll be 30, 40, 50 bicycles in the motorcycle club out of Ontario, Canada.
If they call and make an appointment, we're willing to take anybody anytime. We have to find somebody who has a license to do that, but,
Mm-hmm.
That's weddings,
Yeah.
funerals,
Yeah.
parties, special parties. We've had several of them.
You go out and sit in the middle, or what do
No, you
do?
gotta have it
Actually,
moving it all the time,
you have
but
to-
sure we sit in the middle. You know we do. It's the same, we have fireworks off of it.
Really? It's,
but it's a fun thing. It isn't all work, it's a lot of work.
We have a lot of
It isn't all
fun, we
work.
meet a lot of people over it,
mm-hmm.
and some of the experiences you have, I'll never forget. People, the questions they ask on it. And this lady comes over and she says, wants to know how big the biggest fish is we caught. Oh, I says, I don't know, we don't know. Catch some pretty good sized ones. Where do you catch them? Because my husband's gonna fish. So I point over, and I've done this, now I do it all the time because you get that question more than any other question.
Really?
Where do you fish?
Oh.
Because my husband fishes or we fish. And I point out, I said, now you count out from the shore on the stove side, you count out 4 rows above. Now you look up this way, probably about 100 yards. About half, no, not quite halfway to the ferry here. And I get them to look, and I said, you see where that water's kind of lower and it's in there? And they'll look. No, I said, you're looking in the wrong place. And they look, pretty soon they'll agree with you. Yeah, they can see. Oh, I said, I caught that fish about a week ago, and they said that hole will fill up in the next week. And then turn my back and walk away. This one lady hit me with a pocketbook, and I swear she had bricks in it. Other one that I get the kick out of, and I'll never forget it. And you know the girl.
When
You
she
want to
was
know
little.
what the ice, when does the ice flow come up? I says, oh, it comes up in the spring. How? Why? I says, well, it in the winter it gets waterlogged and sinks to the bottom. You know when you're swimming how much
In the
colder it is
summertime.
on the bottom than it is on the top? She goes back to school and argues about it. She come down, I thought she was going to kill me. My first experience that I remember of the ferry, you might say, was kind of bad in some ways. They took me over when I was about 8 years old, and that's in the ferry book that Grandpa took me over, and they had a wagon, and we didn't bother putting the wagon on a ferry because that cost more. So we rode the ferry across, went over to Clayton's, and he bought me my first 4-H project, a Guernsey calf.
Yeah.
We brought him, and we got him about a quarter of the way off a stove, and he didn't want to leave home. He jumped in the lake and went back. I jumped right in after him, and I know, we ended up in the swamp. Of course, there was no houses above the ferry, and we was back in the swamp. I had the calves, but they was hollering, and I wouldn't answer them because I didn't want to be caught. I was scared. We wanted to go to Stowe for some reason because the sunfish were biting better over on the lily pads back when they had cornstalk weeds in the lake before they started spraying. And we go over there. Well, how do you get over? Well, you either swim or take the ferry. Well, the ferry's too slow, so we was riding horses. We all had horses when we was kids. We'd ride a horse up, go in on where the old fish hatchery was, and swim across the lake. But we learned in a hurry you couldn't get out above the ferry where we wanted to fish because it's mud bottom and the horse would flounder in the mud and, well, he'd get away from you. You might be underneath it. So we'd land in the second cottages down because it's hard bottom. We didn't think anything more swimming across the lake than the man in the moon.
Right. Yep.
You just grabbed a hold of the horse's tail. You didn't hang out from the front because them front feet were moving.
Because of our
Bicentennial.
bicentennial, we had a lot more people come. We had 15 weekends plus 3 holidays, and we had 3,400 pedestrians, 1,800 cars, 500 bikes, 215 motorcycles. We made 1,416 trips and took in about $14,000.